Eugeria Live, brought to you by Griswold Home Care. Eugeria is a Greek word meaning health of body and mind in aging individuals. Eugeria Live is a weekly show celebrating the heroes that contribute to the Eugeria of our elderly and disabled population. Now joining us in the studio are your hosts, John Butler and Sam Grass.
Good afternoon. This is Sam Grass bringing you another Eugeria Live broadcast where we discuss topics of the day as they affect our senior population. Joining me today as co-host is John Butler. Good afternoon, John.
Hey, everybody. It's John Butler. Good to see you. Good to have everybody with us. I want you to know that Griswold Home Care has been providing consistently excellent in-home care for seniors for over 28 years in the Atlanta area. And specifically, one of the things we do is we look for ways to serve clients and just families of seniors in ways that extend their knowledge about important resources that they could be taken advantage of as they go through this challenging time in their lives. And to that point, today, we are very pleased to have Laura Jalbert with us. I've known Laura for many years. She's always been a consummate professional social worker, but she has developed a team of excellent social workers who do services for people in their homes. It's quite remarkable, and she has a great team, and I want to welcome Laura today.
Thank you. It's nice to be here and nice to virtually see all of you out there.
Great. All right, Laura, Mindful Transitions, how long have you been around? And tell me a little bit about what it is you do, because I think it's an unusual service that you provide, and not a lot of people really are prepared to understand what it is you do. So help us understand that.
Mindful Transitions was developed out of my private practice. Initially, I was trying to see older adults in an office setting, and what I found was that their family members, paid caregivers, everyone who supported them had to be on board with these older adults getting into psychotherapy appointments. And so my model was that I'm going to go to my client. And so that's exactly what I did. And that's exactly what the team now does. There are 18 of us now, and we go into the private homes, assisted living communities, independent living communities, and provide clinical social work services on site in the home. Clinical social work services would be things like psychotherapy, talk therapy. We're working on issues of depression, anxiety, all things that regular people have at any age, but certainly as older adults age and their changes physically and mentally come, this is an ideal time for psychotherapy.
Have you seen the need for that increase substantially through this pandemic? I would assume yes, but what have you seen in that regard?
So while the need has increased through the pandemic, I think one of the challenges is getting older adults to embrace the telehealth model, which is what is safe for us all to be doing right now. And so telehealth is taking a village for a lot of families and in communities as well. So older adults are requiring assistance to get on a Zoom call just like this, or any other platform where telehealth is provided. And in fact, some older adults are saying, I don't want to see my therapist by phone. I don't want to talk to anyone until you can come see me physically. I had a client tell me last week, she said, I don't know what I'm going to do until you can come hug me again. So it's definitely a challenge with everyone trying to kind of transition so suddenly and to get everyone on board, because this technology does not flow easily to most older adults.
So what is a typical, or maybe I should say ideal, client for you? Who would most naturally fit to what you serve, how you serve?
We have a number of different kinds of clients, but I would say the things that matter most in how helpful we could be would be, does the client have awareness that something is going on that they don't like, and that they have some control to be able to work on it? So are they agreeable to working with someone in, or can they be convinced to work with someone so that they can, really talk through and think through things in a different way. So somebody with depression who may not realize that they've been depressed, somebody who's making a lot of phone calls to their adult children may have anxiety that's not being treated or addressed. So, we see clients that have had a long history of mental illness over the years, and maybe even that had been institutionalized years ago. So we can see clients that have had severe and persistent mental illness lifelong. And then we can also see clients who have grief and loss, maybe about the loss of their spouse or their home or their lifestyle or their physical well-being changes. So we can see clients adjusting to those things as well.
So are you typically contacted initially by a family member that recognizes the problem with their parent?
That is often who calls us, but some of the older adults call us directly as well. Sometimes they really do follow the recommendations of their physicians, and their doctor says, hey, I think you need to add therapy to the mix. And so they do call directly themselves as well.
So this is not foreign to physicians. It is therapy. The difference is it's in their home. Is that correct?
That's right. It's just like regular psychotherapy in an office, only it's in their home. And psychiatrists are very aware of our practice. And of course, the more psychiatrists who know about us, the more they say, oh my goodness, so glad to know you're there. But yeah, it's just like traditional psychiatry in an office setting. If you went and saw a doctor or if you went and saw a therapist, just like an office setting, only we can see a whole lot more of what's really going on than when you would come to an office setting. So for example, I can see, dishes aren't done. I can see the mail isn't open for the last month. I can see prescription bottles dated from June that haven't been opened. I can see those things, and those are helpful for families sometimes and physicians to know about. And those are the kind of things that don't get picked up in an office setting.
So today, in the midst of the pandemic that we're going through, what would you guess is the rough percentage of who you can actually, your staff, your team, can actually see in their home versus have to do it virtually?
Right now, we are 100% of virtual. We have 2 emergency cases that we are only seeing to keep people out of the hospital. But otherwise, everything we're doing is virtual because there just is not enough science out there about how we can keep our patients safe.
So how do you bridge the technology gap for, I assume that a good percentage of your clients are seniors, right?
They are. So we've been playing IT a little bit and trying to help as we go. So many times, believe it or not, just like how we work in psychotherapy, it's learning the client's language for things. So for example, yesterday, someone was telling me that her Google was broken. Now, you and I know that all of Google is not broken, but my patient's Google browser was having problems, and so she needed to use Internet Explorer or some other browser. But the point was I had to understand her language about what she's doing so that I could sort of coach her through, okay, so here's what you'll click, here's where you'll find it. But many times we are sort of getting and giving a crash course in IT. Unless it's a phone session, then we just know how to call and they know how to pick up. But the video, we have definitely had to put on our IT hat quite a bit.
So it's a green visor you put on for a little time and then you take it off?
Something like that. Yeah, something like that. I do find myself asking the question, is it plugged in? Is it turned on? So definitely the IT piece has been a challenge, and especially for those of us who are not particularly tech savvy to begin with in a normal way. So now trying to get there and coach others is quite a difference.
So I suspect that some of our viewers, this will be a brand new topic to them, even though they may have been to a therapist. This is really about dealing with things like depression and other things that are not necessarily what you would already had experience getting treatment for. So how would you describe to an adult child or an adult, a senior adult, when is the time? What is the signal? What triggers the need to call you? If they're going to call you directly as opposed to being referred by a physician or a psychiatrist, for example, what would they look for?
Especially during this time, I think we would tell people to look for increased isolation, which unfortunately we know right now everyone has. I would say look for behavior changes, attitude changes, changes in the language. Is the language negative and down and hopeless in perhaps the wording that your loved one is using? Are you hearing things like, I don't know if I'm going to make it, or, really negative statements might indicate a great deal of depression that is sort of flying under the radar because no one is laying eyes directly on your loved one. You could look for excessive repeated behaviors. We're seeing a lot of people who maybe had mild anxiety to begin with, but all of the isolation and not being able to control their world is increasing their anxiety as well. So they're, repeatedly calling, repeatedly worrying about a bill that got paid last week, those kind of things. So I would say behavior change and language changes that tell you what the mood is like.
So I'm thinking of a person right now that I have noticed. It's an older lady, and she has, I think, I would have to say she is presenting to indications of depression. I think she has, I would guess she's lost the will to live. I mean, she's just surviving. So how would I connect her with you?
I think the hardest piece for anyone who's not a therapist is to have to ask the client, would it help to talk to someone? I think bridging that gap and having that initial conversation seems to be the hardest barrier for people to overcome. But I'm telling you, it is as simple as, would it help to talk to someone? A very simple, open-ended, sort of dialogue about, could I give you some information about someone you could talk to? Easy peasy. And then you could further say, I can connect you, they can call you, you can call them, whatever you're most comfortable with. But it's just that bridge question of saying, would it help to talk to them?
Laura, I'd be interested in knowing how your clinicians and what they do in a practice standpoint mesh and dovetail with what we would consider a traditional MD, a psychiatrist, or psychologist. How does it all come together?
That is a really good question. So we work alongside the other professionals who might be treating a patient, psychiatry and psychology included. But let me explain how that works, because in psychiatry, typically anymore, a psychiatrist is mostly just prescribing medication. The days of a psychiatrist providing talk therapy are kind of gone. There are still psychiatrists in town who do psychotherapy, but there are fewer than those who just prescribe. So that said, knowing that a psychiatrist is going to be the prescriber, then we are often their eyes and ears about what's happening once the new med is on board. And because of our training and our specialty knowledge, specifically with older adults, we know what we're looking for in terms of side effects. Is she incredibly sleepy for the 3 days that she started this new medication? Is she dizzy at night? Is she taking it at the wrong time? Did she ever get it filled at the pharmacy in the month since the doctor prescribed it? So these are the questions that we ask as part of our work that would help a psychiatrist understand, well, gosh, I guess it's not going to work if you didn't take it for the month. Now, for something like a psychologist, generally, Medicare will only allow one treating professional to provide psychotherapy at the same time. So if a client is already receiving psychotherapy from a psychologist, we cannot provide the same service and have Medicare pay for it. also it's really confusing to the patient and creates all sorts of conflict to have two providers who might be saying the same thing, different things. If a psychologist is seeing a patient for psychological testing or evaluating the beginnings of memory loss, let's say, and creating a report regarding psychological testing, we would welcome that report. Oftentimes, those are the things that make my life so much simpler, is to have that psychology report of, psychological testing for 4 hours that my patient did, helps me figure out, where they're going to retain information, what strategies we may need to look at long term to get them to practice behaviors that we were talking about, that sort of thing. So we would work alongside a psychologist briefly if they did testing, but we can't provide psychotherapy at the same time as the psychologist.
They may pass the patient to you then at that point, and then you pick it up from that point on.
Absolutely. And then with someone like a psychiatrist, we're going to continue working in partnership and providing that feedback back and forth with that particular specialist, because the information we have is oftentimes information that they do not have access to since they're not in the home.
Of all the things that I know you're proud of your team, because I know a good number of your teammates, and they're all quite exceptional, frankly, the ones that I know. I don't know that I know all of them, but I know quite a few of them. What would you say you're most proud of your organization you've put together over these years?
We jokingly call them the brain trust. The brain trust knows a lot of things of all of our team. Everyone shares resources and shares knowledge when we need it. But I think the thing that I'm most proud of with my team of rock stars, the brain trust, is how they support each other and how they are there for each other. When someone has a question, we all have, background and expertise in various areas. And I think, knowing that we can call someone who used to work hospice and ask questions and receive support about a patient who may be dying, or call someone who works inpatient psychiatry who knows absolutely what to do when there's a psychiatric emergency. I think watching how they support each other in those ways and in those circumstances is probably the thing I'm most proud of, because it's happened organically. It's not something that I've created. It's just who these fabulous people are.
I suspect you had something to do with creating a culture that made that possible.
We try, but as distant as we all are, culture is really within the individual, because we're all based out of our homes. There is no office where we can stand around the water cooler and support each other. So to be able to see this sort of culture at such a distance with which we work is really cool.
So
really cool.
Give us a tip that you would like to leave our audience with. Just one thing that you would like to share with our audience.
I think if I could leave you with one tip, that it would be to practice your gratitude. Practice your gratitude out loud. In the times that we're in right now, when everything seems worse one day to the next, thinking about your gratitude and talking about it out loud, even if you live alone, say the things that you're grateful for out loud. I think that will help your mood. And if you find that you're having trouble coming up with things that you are grateful for, your mood is so low that you can't think of anything to be grateful for, that is a signal that you need to reach out and call someone. We're here, we're able to help, and this is what we do.
Well, Laura, I'm proud to know you, and I really appreciate your sharing this excellent service to so many seniors, that some of whom I know, and really appreciate what you do, and you're taking the time to share with us this part of your life. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Eugeria Live is brought to you by Griswold Home Care. View this show again on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, or our website at www.eugerialive.com.